Let's watch a video together that is garnering a lot of attention on social media.
Whatever religion you pursue is based on how well your life is going. So for someone like you, very successful white person, Buddhism, meditation, you guys love. A post-economic white person, Gwyneth Paltrow, Rainn Wilson, Katy Perry, just loving.
Like spirituality is a luxury, kind of like subscribing to Goop or something
you
like
in a
that.
sauna in Santa Barbara, Instagram carousel,
like
finding your chakra. When things are going really bad,
you
come to Islam. I'm talking about Mike Tyson. I'm talking about Lindsay Lohan. I'm talking about Andrew Tate. You take the Shahada. How many DUIs do you have?
Andrew Tate?
Oh, of course, brother Tate.
Brother Tate now? Wow.
He took Shahada.
So I love it when a comedian is playing with a little kernel of truth, and they do this so well. Like his bit here is funny because there's something here that's true that he's playing with, even though he's obviously overgeneralizing and making a funny bit out of it. So let's break down this argument from Hasan Minhaj. Do people tend towards different religious expressions based on where they are in their life? Absolutely. So let's take a look at the data. The data shows that when you feel safe, you seek meaning, deepening, nuance, wisdom, presence. So examples of this would be like secular Buddhism, Stoicism, mindfulness in the West. These belief systems attract middle and upper class people, especially in urban educated environments. Why? Because when your basic needs are met, food, safety, housing, you have the luxury of asking, what is the meaning of life instead of how I survive? How can I deepen my enjoyment of life? So Pew Research in 2021 showed that affluent educated Americans are far more likely to identify as spiritual but not religious. And the rise in mindfulness and yoga correlates with higher income and higher education brackets. So these practices promise emotional regulation, but not so much cosmic justice, because what do you need cosmic justice for if life is kind of working out in your favor? You don't need protection from a violent world. You don't need God to intervene. You don't need God to make a lot of demands. You just want to increase your inner peace and your stress reduction and your identity after deconstruction. These belief systems don't require allegiance, just practice. Now, that's not to say that all of Buddhism is this kind of like white Lululemon Pilates kind of Buddhism, but when we're talking about in the West, that kind of Buddhism does attract that kind of clientele, essentially. Now, when life feels dangerous, you seek order, power, and certainty. So examples of this specifically are fundamentalist Islam in post-colonial or conflict zones. So in parts of the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, Islam is not just a belief system, it's a shield against chaos and humiliation and foreign domination. Fundamentalism thrives when people feel powerless and they have this need, this deep need for divine justice, because there is no justice, and moral clarity and a strong community and a strong sense of who's in and who's out in that community. So global Gallup surveys show that in countries with high political instability and poverty, religiosity is really strongly correlated with the desire for moral order. And that makes so much sense. If your reality is that the world is not just, the law is not working, you have to find another world where there is justice, a supernatural world where things make sense and are fair, and there's a very strong God behind it. In the World Values Survey in 2018, we found that the countries with the lowest GDP per capita were also the countries that were more likely to believe in an active interventionist God. And we can see countries go through this process. In Egypt, political Islam rose in tandem with economic collapse and military authoritarianism. In Nigeria, Islam grew when the state was failing to meet and deliver basic services. But missionary groups, and Islam especially, offered food and education and meaning. Even in the US, Black churches provided a sacred space for dignity and protest and survival during segregation. Black churches in the US have an entirely different theology than white churches. For white churches, when we're talking about like Christian nationalism kind of white churches in America, it's about preserving power, preserving the stability and the power that Christianity and white people once had in America. For Black churches, they read in Jesus the promise that the first will be last and the last will be first. It's a restorationist theology that helped them survive being Black in America when it was fundamentally unfair. And so, broadly speaking, suffering doesn't just like make you question God, it just changes the kind of God that you want. If you are suffering injustice, you want a God who sees you and a strong, powerful God who will act. If you're comfortable, you want a God that kind of leaves you alone, or better yet, tells you that you're already divine and you're some ancient starseed. You want to be more present because life is pretty good. So how can I enjoy it more? And so you see this, for example, we can watch this with countries. We can also watch this with individual people like celebrities, where they will switch tracks suddenly. And so switching religious tracks isn't random when you can see what's going on in this person's life. It's a response to either external instability or internal instability, or usually both. So when someone's life feels like it's spinning out of control, there's addiction, trauma, poverty, betrayal, they're looking for strong rules, a strong authority figure, moral certainty, community, order. They're looking for someone to tell them what to do, because when they're in charge of their life, it falls apart and it falls to shit. So after years of addiction and chaos, Russell Brand turned to 12-step spirituality, which involves a higher power. And now he's starting to speak not only about Christianity, but like orthodox Christianity frameworks. So for him, this isn't just a belief. It's not like he did drugs one day or did psychedelics and had an experience with God or had some kind of profound experience. He needed a system to hold him together when he can't trust himself because his life is chaos. AA works this way. AA essentially functions as a secular religion of sorts. Because it provides the order and structure that you need when you're in too much chaos and you're in addiction. And then people 20 years later will feel like they don't need that level of structure anymore, and they will feel like they outgrow AA because now they have enough anchors in place in their life that they don't need to come every week and say I'm an addict, because they just don't feel like that's their identity anymore. So look at someone like Justin Bieber. He found structure in Hillsong, even though like Hillsong, it's full on occult and full on crazy town. But he found structure in it after his chaotic, overexposed teen career. He doesn't need abstract metaphysics. He needed rules and rituals and belonging. Kanye West, after his bipolar breakdowns and his industry disillusionment, dove headfirst into a strict form of Christianity, where his God became not only a protector, but a lawgiver. Shia LaBeouf, from collapse to Catholicism, after years of public meltdowns, abuse allegations, just absolute chaos, he converted to Catholicism while filming a movie, I think it's Padre Pio, something like that, where he was actually doing Catholic rituals in the movie. And he said that the rituals mirrored kind of what he was going through. And it was the first time that he felt safety. And now he's kind of playing in Catholic spaces because he portrayed these rituals on a movie and found that it actually helped him. So Lindsay Lohan, same thing. After years of addiction and legal trouble and paparazzi chaos and Hollywood overexposure, Lindsay Lohan relocates to the UAE. She starts wearing modest clothing, not like full, hijab, but she starts wearing more modest clothing and expresses an interest in Islam. And she's photographed holding the Quran, speaking of its calming and centering effect. And so she hasn't like converted officially, but her spiritual leanings show that she needs more order and containment and modesty in a life that's been defined by collapse and spectacle. So when the world had consumed her as a product, she found comfort in a religion that emphasized discipline and dignity and daily structure. This is why Islam is so tempting when you are needing structure, is because it gives you, like, we're going to pray 5 times a day. We're going to read this. We're going to do this. And that is very helpful for people when they are in too much chaos. After being banned from social media platforms and, he's facing allegations of human trafficking and abuse, Andrew Tate converts to Islam. It's it's his own version of Islam, but he describes it as the last true religion with masculine order. So his version of Islam, of course, centers on hierarchy and dominance and rules and this kind of ultra masculine control. So again, these people are not having private mystical conversions. It's a move towards a system that affirms some kind of order and cosmic justice when your life is in chaos. Fundamentalism is the best shield that we have. It's a frame for control when the self is under threat, either internally, you're in chaos, or externally, your life is in chaos. Another one is Kat Von D. This was a couple years ago when we had this like string of celebrity baptisms. She's known for her tattoos and her gothic aesthetics and dabbling in the occult. And then she shocked her followers with her baptism in 2023, where she just said, like, I reject witchcraft and tarot, and all of that was spiritual confusion. And now I'm an Orthodox Christian. And she had a huge kind of lifestyle shift. And now she talks about motherhood like she's a trad wife. And she had a pretty big kind of conversion before and after. So these conversions aren't irrational, they're protective. In trauma or chaos, the brain and the nervous system crave certainty and identity clarity and moral absolutes and clear in-group and out-group lines, and fundamentalism delivers all of this in one tight, neat package that you don't have to think too much about, because it's hard when you're in chaos to create all of that in yourself, because when you're in charge of your life, you don't do that. At least when you're in the chaos. And so each of these figures had kind of a public collapse, a lack of trust in themselves, a loss of social control or status, and fundamentalist religion offers a way to say, hey, that wasn't really me. That was my broken self. Now I follow the truth. Now my life is good and ordered. And it essentially allows for reinvention with scaffolding. And so some people will say, like, oh, Russell Brand and all these people, like, once you start to get sexual allegations, they turn to Christianity as a way to do like a PR stunt. And while I'm sure that happens, like just turning to religion as a PR stunt, I do think something deeper is happening here. It's not just a PR stunt, because they really actually do want a way to reinvent themselves when they've crashed out. And fundamentalism gives you a way to do that actually works, because it gives you the scaffolding and structure that you need to stop the chaos, essentially. And so this isn't also just how you're raised. This isn't just for like child actors. It's also your genetics too. So psychologists have found that people who have a high need for order and structure and closure, that desire for certainty and order and clarity, that personality type is more likely to be drawn to fundamentalist belief systems, especially when you're under stress. So some people really do, not just because they're child actors in the limelight, some people really do to psychologically function. They need more certainty and order and a black and white system in order to function in a world of this much chaos. And so some of it is nature and some of it is nurture, and when we're talking about people who are drawn to fundamentalism. So the track switch happens the other way too. When people start to feel physically safe or financially secure or psychologically strong enough, they start questioning. They'll start moving away from rigid doctrines. They'll start moving away from punitive worldviews. They'll start moving away from outsourced morality. And instead they'll turn towards like, I'm spiritual, not religious, some system of personal meaning, mysticism, secular Buddhism, tools for healing instead of rules for obedience. And there's lots of examples of this too. So Julia Roberts, she's raised in Catholicism. She shifts to a more fluid spiritual exploration after her success in her career. And now her spiritual life, if you hear her talk about it, it's about awe and it's about personal growth and it's not about authority. Michelle Williams, the actress, she's ex-Mormon. There's going to be, lots of celebrity ex-Mormons. She left the church after success gave her emotional and economic independence, and that safety allowed her to question what once felt non-negotiable as a Mormon. So once the fear goes down, the questions come up. You don't need a protector God when you feel protected. You don't need cosmic certainty when you have tools to navigate uncertainty. So people only often start to deconstruct when their environment gives them permission to do so, either emotionally or socially or financially or psychologically. And there's lots of examples of this. Abraham Piper, he's the son of a mega pastor. He is, a TikTok, Instagram icon. He's the son of John Piper, who was a major figure in the Calvinist movement, the Reformed Calvinist movement. And he left Christianity in early adulthood. He returned briefly and left again, this time for good. And now he makes these really viral TikToks, mocking the contradictions and emotional manipulation in Christianity, specifically evangelical Christianity. So I follow lots of sons of pastors, or pastors who were once pastors who have now deconstructed. Jim Palmer, who runs the Center of Non-Religious Spirituality, who I'm doing a cohort with. He's fantastic. He was once a major pastor in America. The Humanize Me podcast, Bart Campolo, son of Tony Campolo. These are huge voices in the deconstruction space. For Bart Campolo, so he's very much raised in this very strict evangelical environment, and he deconstructs from that space. Katy Perry, she goes from Pentecostal girl to pop star deconstruction, kind of post-religious spirituality. So she's raised like really, really hardcore. So no secular music, strict modesty codes, speaking in tongues at the age of 3 kind of stuff. She enters, pop stardom with this kind of mix of rebellion and confusion, and then later kind of openly starts to explore therapy and like secular concepts of things like self-discovery. And so she now describes herself as not Christian, but spiritual, and she's interested in, emotional healing work. So her spiritual shift followed financial independence and exposure to other worldviews and, psychological work. And so what you'll see sometimes also is like people flipping back and forth. I left Mormonism at 16, stepped out into absolute chaos as a child with no tools. And what do you know? I become like a nuanced Mormonish Christian because I had no tools to handle that level of chaos. I was just watching last night. Don't judge. I was just watching the reunion tell-all for The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And what you'll see is for some of the women like Taylor Frankie Paul, if Mormonism is your only sense of order, you'll see them go back and forth, because when your life falls apart, all of a sudden then she's going back to church. And when life is going okay, you start questioning, like, is this church really true? Because a lot of this stuff is really crazy. And then you start to, stop going for a while until your life falls apart again, and then you go back to church. And so people will do that sometimes for decades. Like if one particular church is your only sense of order and structure, then every time that your life is falling apart, you start showing up at church again. And people will sometimes go back and forth for decades. And I did that a few times, and definitely someone like Taylor Frankie Paul, you can watch that over the past decade. She'll kind of go back and forth. And so we can see that individually, but we can also see this psychologically in societies and how societies will create heavens and hells. So if you tell me about your God, I will tell you, like collectively, like your society's God, I'll be able to tell you what's going on in your society. Like, tell me about your hell and I'll tell you what your people have survived. So when societies become unstable, violent, unjust, they tend to invent vengeful gods, fiery hells, heavens that correct injustice. When societies are stable and prosperous and relatively safe, they tend to create benevolent gods that just kind of like in the East, in very stable agricultures, these are gods that just kind of like protect the cosmic order. But there's less need for hell at all. Heavens are some kind of like peace and bliss. And so some examples of bad hells come from trauma-scarred societies. So we're talking about medieval Europe, constant war, feudal oppression, Black Plague. What's the result? Catholic hell becomes this incredibly graphic, incredibly terrifying, Dante's Inferno kind of concepts of hell. because you had to have an external place where the bad guys get their justice and the good guys get their reward that makes it worth being alive in the shithole of your life. Same thing with like Puritan New England, like harsh winters, starvation, witch trials, social isolation. That's where we get Jonathan Edwards' famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, which describes humans like dangling over hell like a spider over a fire. So God is not love. He's barely tolerating your existence. Modern Islamist extremism in regions destabilized by colonization and war and drone strikes and corruption, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, militant groups will preach literal fiery hells and martyrdom-driven heavens, because heaven becomes a perfect reward for the powerless and hell a tool to frighten dissenters. The afterlife becomes the only justice system when this world's justice system is broken. In Buddhist Pure Land in East Asia, this is a relatively more stable imperial China and Japan. Buddhism starts evolving towards this Pure Land idea of rebirth into a beautiful paradise, no suffering, eventual enlightenment for everyone. Hell exists like in folklore, but it's temporary. It's a place for just like reflection and karmic correction so that everyone will eventually become enlightened. Sweden and Denmark, secular Scandinavia, they're among the happiest and most stable countries in the world. Religion has largely faded. The idea of hell is virtually absent in public life. If people believe in an afterlife at all, it's just kind of vague and benevolent, like rejoining nature or family. There's no need for hell. And the gods retire when the state works, essentially, when there's wealth and when there's education, and when there's stability. So modern age, new age beliefs in the US middle and upper classes. Heaven is like described as this white light, and there's soul families, and there's past life healing and universal love. Not a lot of talk about hell or sin, just like lessons and reincarnation. And this is popular among people with time to reflect and comfort and access to therapy and yoga and spiritual books. So the concept of hell as we think of it today, like an eternal place of torment, was not, originally in the Bible. This is developed as a direct response to Israel's experiences of being of conquest and powerlessness. And this is a perfect example of how collective trauma shapes theology. So I do a whole video on this, like the early versions of the afterlife in Judaism, how there was not moral distinctions. There wasn't a lot going on in the afterlife. And then, came the Babylonian conquest, the temples destroyed, and the Israelites who believed that they were God's chosen people, how could they then be crushed by these pagan empires? And it created this existential crisis where if the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer, like where is the justice? And that's when we start to see the reward of an afterlife for the faithful and punishment for the wicked take shape in the New Testament. So again, if you want that whole story, I think I do 2 whole videos on that story. But essentially, if you can understand the psychology behind order and chaos in a society, or in an individual person, you can see why societies and individuals do what they do. So one of the first things I'm looking for when I'm listening to a client, when I'm doing deep listening, because when I'm with clients, I don't do any of my personal thoughts or personal beliefs, because it's not about me at all. It's about what's the healthiest adjustments you can make within your own worldview. It's not about me at all. So when I'm listening to a client, I'm really listening for, does this person need tools of deconstruction because their life is so ordered, it's not authentic and it's suffocating them? Or do they need tools of reconstruction? Do they need anchors because they're in the void with too much chaos? They're unable to make a decision. They're dissociated because it's just too much to handle the chaos of it all. Because there's tools for both sides, and it's really important for you to know where you are on that spectrum at any given time. So I had a lot of requests for this when I did a really short video on this on TikTok, talking about Hassan Minhaj. It actually got pulled. I was talking about Islam for a little bit, and the video got flagged, and so now it's not available on TikTok anymore. Because say what you want, like, this particular religion, and this is a caricature, and of course it's not everyone, and I say this as someone who participates in Sufism and has a Sufi teacher, but there is sometimes like a lack of sense of humor in this religion. And anyway, when I was talking about it on TikTok, the video got flagged. But if we want to talk about tools for when you're on the too much order side or when you're on the too much chaos side, that's really good for you to have for your own personal toolkit. So like for me nowadays, I know where I am on my own spectrum. And so I know what tools that I need. And it's really helped me give me a lot of like resilience and stability, because I know which side of order and chaos I'm in at any given time. So the top tools for, I'm on the Katy Perry side of things. I was raised in fundamentalism. I need to find some space here to breathe. The best tools are critical thinking, epistemology. How do I know what I know? Like just follow some TikTokers that really talk about critical thinking and religion. There's many on YouTube. Books like Thinking Fast and Slow, something like that. Podcasts that break down how people form belief systems. Any of that critical thinking stuff is going to be great. Reading and following people outside your box, especially reading from people who left the same system that you're in, is going to help a lot. Contemplative practices that don't require belief, which is why Sam Harris is so popular for people deconstructing, is because he's presenting contemplative practices that you can do that don't require belief, which allows you to get more comfortable with uncertainty. I'm just going to practice this. I'm going to try this, even though I don't know. You have to sit with the uncomfortable feeling of uncertainty, but there's still practices that can help even with uncertainty. So that's why Sam Harris is so helpful for that space. Safe community, a coach for questioning where you can talk things out and start to unravel things, online deconstruction groups. Mormon Stories is a huge one, even for non-Mormons. It's kind of known for this. Lots of people follow that, even though they're not Mormon, just because it goes through religion in general. And then Stephen Hassan for this space, who's the leader in cults and cult thinking. He left the Moonies cult. And then on social media, I really love like the Knitting Cult Lady, who left the Children of God cult, different cult. All of those are really, really great for just expanding your point of view, getting used to uncertainty, breaking up ways of thinking, examining ways of thinking, and then also creative expression and play. If your old religion was all about rules and performance and seriousness, like start moving your body without caring how it looks. Start painting something even though it's not going to be perfect. That's really, really good for you. So if you lived in too much order, you're going to often experience a fear of being wrong. You're going to have some moral anxiety. You're going to have leftover black and white thinking. You're going to have identity enmeshed with belief. And so you'll be searching for a new belief system. And so the tools above all that help with that are curiosity over certainty, nuance over absolutism, identity beyond belief. And the voices in the deconstruction space are really helpful for that side of things. But where a lot of people are really struggling, because I think there are a lot of tools for deconstruction out there, I'm meeting a lot more people that are struggling with the other side. How do I find anchors for myself and my kids when I don't want to jump into fundamentalist Islam? Or when I do jump into a religion, it feels like I have to turn off my rationality, or I really want to believe this because it's helpful, but I literally can't. It's that area that I feel like is really lacking in modern conversations, which is why I feel so called to talk about it. So when someone is in too much chaos, emotionally, existentially, materially, they don't need to deconstruct more. Like, you don't need to listen to any of those podcasts or deconstruction spaces. That's not what you need. You don't need to keep examining your ways of thinking until like nothing is standing anymore. Like, that tool is useful for that side, not useful if you need to reconstruct. And so what they often crave without knowing it is structure and grounding and rhythm, but they're still listening to post-religious deconstruction podcasts. And that's why they're not feeling like they're thriving, because they haven't gone to what are my anchors. So the best thing for that is There's some things that we can do here. Daily structure and ritual. The brain in too much chaos or trauma or survival mode needs predictability to feel safe. And if you're not going to get that from a religion, you have to create that yourself. So rituals create these small moments of predictable safety, and it doesn't have to be religious. Coffee at sunrise, walking the dog, lighting a candle before bed. But the thing is, like, you are going to have to be the engine behind doing it, because the religion isn't telling you do these rituals or you'll go to hell. So things like morning and evening routines, habit tracking acts, secular Sabbath practices like having a no screen day, a walking morning, journaling every Sunday, whatever is really good for your brain. And then something else we really need is core values identification. When the world feels meaningless, you need your own compass, not somebody else's map. And the only way that you can do that is know what you are and what you're about. And so values give you something to aim for when you've lost belief or identity or community, because you don't actually choose them in a list of, 150 core values. If you actually examine your life, some core values just seem to matter to you more than others. And so that gives you a starting place, that gives you some anchors. There are philosophies that are capable of holding chaos without collapsing. The most popular ones are Stoicism, secular Buddhism, existentialism, and absurdism slash positive nihilism. And these frameworks don't deny suffering. They give you tools to sit with it. Stoicism, you don't control everything, but you control your response. Secular Buddhism, craving cause suffering, awareness brings freedom. Existentialism, you need to construct your own meaning system. Absurdism, the world doesn't make sense, but you can still find a way to dance with that. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if I may be so bold, my own book, which talks about all the anchors that religions provide, and then how to get those anchors in your life in an authentic way when you don't believe the vessel that those anchors come with, because then you'll have to believe certain things about the universe that you may or may not believe. Consistent human connection is really great, because chaos isolates, connection rehumanizes. You don't need 100 people, you just need a few steady people, and you have to take risks to find those people. Narrative reconstruction and story work, super important. People in chaos often feel like they're in the middle of a story with no plot. Like you can't fix the past, but you can rewrite the chapter that you're in. And this one is so important that I do a whole course on it, where I hold your hand and help you transition from an old story to a new narrative, and all the tools involved in how to do that, which brings your brain back online if you're dissociated, because now it has a story. It knows what to do. It knows how to contextualize suffering. And it's not a delusional one. It's one that's working within the reality of your life. So in psychological framing wise, people in chaos feel disoriented, overstimulated, numb, hopeless, disconnected, lots of numbing behaviors, disconnected from purpose and self. And so what you need are tools that offer grounding and continuity and identity and belonging and self-authority. So if we can't get more tools in the secular world, what we're going to see is more people in chaos. And then what fills that gap is either nihilism and like slow suicide, numbing behaviors, or consumerism, or political religion, or you're just so fed up with all of that, you just return to religion. And we see this with the rise of young men who are struggling and don't feel needed and don't have a sense of purpose. And the only thing that is reaching them is patriarchal religion. And what do you know? For the first time in history that we know of, Gen Z men are more active in church than Gen Z women, because the women are doing better currently at creating purpose and creating community than the young men are. And so until there's more tools for that side of things, we should expect to see more Justin Biebers and Russell Brands, and even Joe Rogan, who just started going to church, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is the golden child of atheism. She was the most famous ex-Muslim, and now she's a Christian because she was so lacking in any kind of meaning or structure upon leaving Islam, and there wasn't any tools for that in the secular world. And so essentially we are going to see more celebrities on drugs turn to religion or some kind of AA, which operates as a secular religion, in order to find grounding. And as long as there's TikTok, there's going to be the other direction happening, which is people leaving and deconstructing their worldview and opening up more nuance and complexity. And so this is something that, like, once you get an eye for it, you can watch it in an individual's life or in a society. So I can know in a collective, if their hell all of a sudden got really scary and their heaven got really amazing, they're suffering a lot as a people, and there's more chaos and injustice. So we're going to be, living for the next life. And I can tell when a country starts to leave religion altogether, you're going to see markers of culture and wealth and education and stability, because you need those first before you can let go of fundamentalism. You can even see this a little bit politically, even though, like, I'm realizing this is only one lens to look at things, but even politically, like, take Trump out of it and the cult of Trump out of it. If we're just talking about people who tend towards conservatism, they usually are that personality type that has a higher need for order and structure, purity, loyalty, and those who tend towards the political left are usually more comfortable with dissent, breaking things open. They're usually more high in openness as a personality type. And so what you'll see is when fear is up, we want authoritarians. We literally ask for them. They don't just pop up out of thin air. They arise during times of chaos. The fastest way to get a dictator is to have moments of anarchy where it feels like things are falling apart. And that will breed this clinging to order and a desire for power to set things straight and be very black and white. But if it's been steady for a while and there's been some stability, there'll be a desire to rearrange things. Like, let's examine gender and sexuality, and let's break down social norms. So what people don't realize is that in many ways, the political left scared so many people, especially that personality type, in breaking down religion and nationalism and gender and not having a strong border and postmodernism in general, that it actually fueled a strong authoritarian response of the right out of fear. And we can even determine this in children. You can guess what an American adult will be when they get older in preschool. The kids who didn't need a lot of support and could go far away from mom at the playground tended towards the left when they got older by the age of 25. And those who clung to, like, mom or the teacher, they went to the right. They psychologically needed more support. They feel more anxiety. They feel more fear. Their nervous system is more triggered, which is hilarious in the sense that the left gets called snowflakes. But in any study that we found, people on the political right actually have a more responsive nervous system than people on the political left. In America, these studies I'm talking about. And so anxious and fearful attachment kids as toddlers were much more likely to identify as conservative adults. And if you had a strong kind of focus and sense of self in childhood, you're more likely to lean liberal later in life. And if you add to that authoritarian parenting, if you have both of those, you are most likely to be conservative by the age of 26. So if you had authoritarian parenting and a fearful temperament, a reactive nervous system as a child, that combination will just breed a conservative, essentially. And children with good self-regulation and more independent tendencies with their parents were more likely to grow up liberal. And so we have even bigger worldwide studies on this too. There's the existential security theory that says that people in stable conditions are more likely to adopt secular and liberal views. Those in insecure conditions tend to lean conservative. And so we see the same thing with religion. People with high fear sensitivity and low ability cognitively to hold complexity are more likely to adopt fundamentalist worldviews across all religions. So when a religion is doing well and trade is thriving, you get things like the golden age of Islam, where there's science and there's nuance and scholarship. And the second it gets threatened, the structure of the religion gets threatened, boom, it's back to fundamentalism. I watched this happen with Mormonism, where when I was younger, there was this thing called Sunstone, where scholars and leaders in the church could go and discuss and present papers, and all of that shut down. And today with so much pressure on Mormonism, the only thing you're getting from Mormonism is obedience narratives. Obey, 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 follow the prophet, obey. And you get these increases for a demand for loyalty. Religions circle the wagons and get more fundamentalist when they're threatened. So fundamentalism is trauma's favorite coping mechanism. If your nervous system is fried, don't be surprised when your theology goes authoritarian. And if this is someone you know who went full on fundamentalist, I hope it helps you to see them differently when you understand that in their nervous system and in their brain, they're a very scared little child, even though what they're saying is like so offensive and so absurd. Like at the root of their brain, they're a scared little child. So, am I overgeneralizing? Of course. Is this the only way to see reality with this lens of order and chaos? No, but it is one lens to put on. And it is one lens to also, like, it is a mirror that is great to look at for yourself. And really, like, if you love this lens, like, if you find this really helpful, I think Taoism is the best religion that does this because it sees everything in terms of opposites, masculine and feminine, order and chaos, and watching the flow of the pendulum swing between the two, whether it's a people, like a group of people, or you individually. So if you really love that lens, Taoism is the one that really developed that lens the best. And people find it to be a very helpful structure with which to see the world and see themselves. So I think it is helpful to see why people are doing what they're doing, why some secular kid decides to become Muslim, why some celebrity gets baptized, why countries that are the most violent are also the most religious. Atheists like to say, and I think they're wrong about this, that religion causes the violence. But the data shows that it's the other way around. The chaos of the violence creates the clinging to religion, and then the religion perpetuates the violence. So this is why places like Iceland seem to do pretty well without fundamentalism or religion at all. They're not fighting with anyone, and they have very high, education and equality and all of that. So countries with high inequity and high violence, like Nigeria, Pakistan, these are the countries that have the highest rates in the world for literal belief in hell and literal belief in like daily prayer that you have to do. In contrast, the most peaceful and equitable countries, Iceland, Sweden, Japan, are functionally post-religious. And it all comes down to where you are in the spectrum of order and chaos. So you can always watch your country, where your country is on that spectrum. For the US, we got very scared with a bunch of stuff that we were deconstructing and turned to Trump and Christian nationalism and fundamentalism to feel safe in the chaos, and with the level of wealth inequality that we're having and injustice that we're having in the country. And you can also watch where you are. I know at any given time whether I need to fly or whether I need to ground, whether I need to expand or whether I need to contract. And it becomes like a breath in my life, because when you know that about yourself, it becomes natural, like breathing, instead of like running out of air. It's a rhythm that you can use to try to kind of create a heartbeat in your life. When I'm feeling ungrounded, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling chaos, that's when I start upping my rituals, like start waking up with the same ritual in the morning and going to bed with the same ritual at night. When I feel like I don't need that, sometimes I let something go for a little bit. And sometimes I go explore a new tradition because I have the psychological safety and the privilege and stability in my life to go over here and try something totally new. And so I hope that was interesting and helpful for you. I'm realizing as I'm talking, like in this moment, I'm realizing that I'm like the most annoying person at the party, because here you have Hassan Minhaj doing like this really funny bit. Like I really found it hilarious, and I ruined it probably by talking about it for an hour. But that's what I do. He's playing with this truth as a comedian, and he crafted this really funny bit with it, and this is how I create. I do a 45-minute YouTube video saying essentially the same thing, but it's not funny at all. But this is how I create. This is my craft that I'm still working on. So I hope that was interesting for you, and seeing why, like seeing that little nugget of truth that he was playing with. and seeing why others do what they do, and also hopefully seeing why you do what you do, and maybe some tools that you need in your own life. Next week, we're going to continue on from this and discuss the differences between Republican Jesus and Democrat Jesus, and whether the US is getting to a place where there's really going to be like a red and blue version of each religion because of how politically entrenched we are. And there is some data that's showing that that is what is happening with religion in America. So let me know what you thought about this episode. Let me know if you thought that that bit was funny. I found it fascinating and funny. And when I talked about it on TikTok, it was so controversial that the video got pulled, which was interesting in and of itself. So let me know what you thought about this episode, and I'll see you next time.